Today I'm so happy to have a guest like Dani Hao here, a well-known public speaker, podcaster, marketer, and career advisor. Welcome, Dani.
Thank you so much for having me, Antonis, and nice to see you all too.
Good to have you here. So, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Dani. So I started my career actually in PR and communications in the B2C space. And I realized there's a lot of plays that within the B2C world that could be applied into B2B. So I originally started in the fashion industry where a lot of sales was built around building relationships, working with the media, and hosting these events where influencers would come in and showcase a brand or showcase a product. And I realized, well, if this was working for this industry, it must work for other industries too. So then I
Yeah.
started my own agency called Spark Marketing and Creative, where I started to work with other B2B companies. And
Mm-hmm.
I decided to test this approach of like, hey, are
Yeah.
we able to build these influencer strategies and also these in-person events and communities into the B2B space? And it did start to work. So we now focus on igniting the power of community building and relationships to
Mm-hmm.
drive millions in pipeline for fast-growing B2B tech companies. That's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit about me. So yeah, we've worked with companies like Mutiny,
Mm-hmm.
Rippling, Common Room, and many others.
That's nice.
Mhm.
There's always a link in the description for all those informations for people to check it out down in the description. And I was wanted to ask like, okay, why do you think you are in this specific industry? What makes it special to you personally?
Yeah. So ever since I was young, I loved learning about the newest and greatest technology and just the way that
Hmm.
technology has changed our lives. Not to date
Yeah.
myself, but I am a 90s baby. So I'm sure like for the listeners in the audience, for people who grew up in the 90s, you still remember what it was like without a lot of like these social media tools, a lot of these new wearable tech. And I really saw how much our world has changed from the world of the internet going into the world of the cloud and now going into the world of AI. So it's personal. I really care about how the way technology has impacted us. So that's why I got into the B2B space, making a big move from the B2C
Yeah.
space. And,
Mm.
and I think one thing in the B2B space is that for the longest time, the way people approach branding and marketing, it was very impersonal. It was like, what can I
Yeah.
sell you versus what is it that I can solve for you, right? It's less
Exactly.
about the problems that you can solve. It's
Mm.
more about how can I sell my product? And I really see that
Mm.
this is starting to shift, and I wanted to be a part of that, which is why I think community building and brand building is really just the next generation of this. Where yes, we got all of the AI products out there like ChatGPT making your jobs easier, but it's also
Mhm.
making it a lot more impersonal. So how can we bring
Yeah.
back that personal element? And that's what I love helping with.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because everyone nowadays, every business is building an online presence and status in social media and beyond now, even with AI, as you mentioned. Do you think
Mhm.
that anyone, and when I say anyone, I mean anyone can and is capable of creating a brand online? Or there is some, I don't know, let's call it some limits. Let's say that like not everybody can actually do it.
I think everyone is able to do it. I think as long as you're
Mhm.
able to put in the work, and also if you have a really strong,
Yeah.
compelling story to tell. Because I do feel like,
Mhm.
especially for the more traditional industries, not to call anybody out here, but they
Yeah,
tend to
yeah.
take a more conservative approach. And so even though they may be doing the work, maybe they're not actually standing out. And that takes a
Mhm.
long time to build a brand, right? You want that consistency, but also you want a very specific, different view on how you see things.
Yeah, I see. That's nice.
Mhm.
So did you start into this straight away, or you started with basically a you started as a part-time job, like most, let's say most who enter the business for the first time, they were already in a normal job from 9 to 5, and then they started it as a side hustle and then got bigger. How was yours?
Yeah, pretty similar. So I used to be in a 9 to 5. So I started in a tech company called Procurify, which was a software
Hmm.
company in the tech space. And this is where I
Okay.
kind of applied a lot of my learnings from B2C into B2B. when it wasn't the sexiest industry, or like we were selling procurement software. And even if you ask like a random person on the street what is procurement, they might not even know that. So just from like an education perspective, we had a lot of work to do around the space. But also, I would say that I had a lot of fun with it because it was a more traditional industry. There was more opportunities to really turn up the spice and also turn up the way that we were approaching messaging and branding in the space. And we didn't really even have to do that much different. We just had to be more different than the competitors to really win more business because everyone else was doing the same thing.
Yeah, let's see. Indifference, let's say. I love it.
Exactly.
Do you know what has been, let's say, the biggest game changer for your business in the past year?
I think there's a few trends that I can talk about when it comes to marketing and community building. So one, I've noticed that more and more companies out there, they're starting to build micro communities, even more so than say like the 2010s. I think the recent few years it's really bubbled up. And I think there's a reason for that. They're realizing that, the traditional ways of email marketing and social media marketing is not really enough. I think people are hungry to talk to other people that care about the same problems or care about the same issue. Yeah, so I've definitely started to see that. And really, it's been a game changer for a lot of companies that I've advised for, just because they realize the community is almost a moat. So even though, customers might come and go, depending on, hey, they feel like this product is good for me, maybe they outgrow it. But when you have people in the community, you have a constant cycle of people advocating for your product, new customers that might know about your brand through this community. And also you can build in some mechanisms to then promote content from your company within that community. So it's almost like a really well-rounded loop and machine that you can turn on, and it will always bring benefits for you as long as you put some love into it. So that's one trend that I've seen. I think another thing that I've seen too is, we hear a lot about influencer marketing when it comes to brands and B2B, especially in like fashion. But started to see that too, especially nowadays in the tech world where I'm in. You start to see a lot of people really work with these people with a lot of followings on like LinkedIn or even on TikTok, on the business side of TikTok, where they would pay an influencer to promote content or perhaps create content together, similar to like what you're doing, Antonis, like getting on podcasts or getting on other opportunities to get the brand out there. I definitely see more of that.
All right. So do you think an influencer is a key in terms of spreading the word for the brand?
I think there's definitely a way to do it well, which is making sure that you give them their own voice, but also giving them some guidelines on how or what they should be saying. So for example, one of my clients, they're a software solution that helps with intent data. And they started to look out for people on LinkedIn who's been writing about this, like how can you use your data from your software a lot better, or how can you use your sales signals to really reach the right audience. And so we did a search of like, who are the people who are talking about these topics already on LinkedIn? And then we sent them a simple message asking if they wanted to collaborate on content together. And I think like, it's like a win-win, right? Like we're helping them build their personal brand, but also leveraging their audience as well.
100%. That's the way I see it as well. And with that being said, do you think that you made a mistake? Was there a mistake that you made early on that you learned a valuable lesson from?
Yeah, let me think about it here. I think one mistake is having programs that are disparate from each other. So, when I was at my full-time job, we would have a function that deals with field events. We would have a function that deals with community and content. And our goals were not super aligned. We had our own KPIs, we had our own goals. But I think besides that, there was definitely a bigger opportunity to really connect these separate buckets together into like a whole coordinated campaign. And I think that's a challenge that a lot of companies face. As soon as they start growing, right, they start hiring like a head of something. But what ends up happening is that when you separate out departments, if you don't do it properly, they're doing two separate things, so it doesn't really make sense. Like you should try to combine them together and go towards like a bigger initiative and focus on less things that make more impact.
I see. You mentioned something previously similar to if you want to get out content that's related with the audience, especially when it solves a problem to their situation. So what is the one question that you get asked most often about your business?
Yeah, so one question is how or when do you think I should be ready to build a community, or what are the signals I should look out for? So when people ask me that question, normally I would say, it's a funny question because the answer is you're probably already doing it, you just don't know it yet, and you don't know how to weaponize it. So for example, like if you already have a newsletter list, that's already a micro community itself, right? People are willing to give their email addresses to subscribe to something that's coming like every week, every month.
Yeah.
Same with social, right? If you already have like a LinkedIn page or a Facebook page, and you're noticing that your engagements are starting to increase month by month, you're starting to see people talk in the comments, that's also a micro community. So when people ask me this, I tell them you're already doing a lot of the things that are community building. You just haven't brought them all together and weaponized it yet.
Yeah, I see. That's a really interesting conversation. I think it's a long conversation as well. But I have to ask the question. So if there is someone who wants to create a community and weaponize it, can you help them first of all? And then my next question would be, what's a tip for them and their community to work?
So yeah, the part one is definitely if you want to get any advice on setting it up, I'm happy to hop on a call with you just to get you started. Even
Brilliant.
If you don't want to work with me long term, happy to always do a coffee chat. In part two, I think one piece of advice to get them started is by thinking about whether an own community is actually the right strategy. Just because not every company has the resourcing or let's say the bandwidth to be able to stand up something that's like your own community. But what you could do is look for communities out there that play in a similar space and look for partnership opportunities. So for example, like the RevOps community, that's like a large persona-based community where you can work with directly. Or let's say there's an industry-based community out there that you can work with as well. So I would say, start with thinking about, do you want to build your own community and why? And do you have the resources to leverage that? And then if yes, I can definitely help get you started. Or you can start thinking about, do we have enough, resourcing, not just resourcing, but also interest from our current list already? Like, do we have a good newsletter following? Do we have people who are happy customers who are willing to advocate for us in this community? And that's some signals to say like, hey, maybe you may be ready for that.
I see. That makes sense. If there is a business or a brand or an individual who wants to start and thinks that a community is the way to go for him, but it's really at the early stages, so it doesn't make sense for them to hire someone, an expert like you, to help them with it. But let's say they start by themselves. What's the first thing they should focus on in building that community? The first thing is,
I think the first is understanding like who your audience should be in the community, who should be in the community. I think one of the biggest mistakes people take is that they want to have everybody in the community, right? They're like, I want my customers, I want prospects, I want people who don't know about my brand. And the more specific that you get, the better the community will be. So that's always my first tip. And it's actually quite simple if you think about it. The community should be an extension of your brand. So most likely the people you want in the community are people who should be buying your product. So if you have a clear understanding of your ICP for your product, that probably is the community. So that's a hint for the audience.
I get what you mean. Especially, that can be a good metaphor for it. The game have you ever played the game with the darts?
Oh yeah, like the dartboard.
Yeah, so when I first did it, I was just throwing. I didn't look, no goals. I didn't look where to hit, whatever. The moment I had my eyes on the middle, the red one in the middle, everything went closer to the middle, and that's because I had my goal, specific to that thing. And I think it's the same when you're trying to niche down. If you're trying to help everybody, you're gonna hit literally everywhere, and it wouldn't make sense. But if you make it specific, then it's basically your target and it's easier for you to hit it. Don't you think?
Exactly. I totally agree. I think a lot of business owners, when they start off, like they have this scarcity mindset where they think, oh, if I start with a small audience, I'm losing out on this business that I'm not focusing on. But it's
Yeah.
actually the opposite. You start small, you win that audience, and then you expand.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, what's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self starting out as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think for my sense of for my let me think younger self. Good question. Yeah, I think for my younger self, one thing I would challenge my own self to think about if I were to talk to
Mhm.
them, I would say one, trust your gut instinct. So I think as we grow as professionals, a lot of times we end up falling into the data trap where we look at the data and we're like, oh, this is not working, or hey, like
Yes.
maybe it's not worth us trying something new. But sometimes our gut is telling us something else, and that gut instinct, I would say, a lot of times is stronger than the data because data doesn't say everything. So I would say that's
Yeah.
one. The second one is find really great mentors. I've had some great mentors in my life, but I wish I started off earlier. I wish I
Yeah.
didn't really live my own bubble and reached out to other people who are doing amazing work and learn from them. So I would say, yeah, find great mentors. And then
Yeah.
three, never stop learning. So I think like, even when you have 10 years or 20 years of experience, there's always new things to learn. Just keep an open mind on that.
Mm. I see. I think that's related a little bit in myself as well, because when you have the choice and you're starting out and you're very young, you have a choice. On the one hand, stay somewhere for the sake of it with no development, no mentor to look at, because nobody's as successful as you want to be or close to your ideal person, right? And then on the other hand, you got somewhere that's a bit more difficult than the place you already are. And you think, okay, at least here, I've got a mentor. So would you pick the one with a mentor from the beginning, or start small and then you find the mentor later on?
Yeah, I would definitely. Well, I'm the personality that would probably go for the more difficult route, but
Yeah.
I would say, one piece of advice I would give to people I work with, and it's almost a joke too. I say like, if you're not embarrassed by the work you did, say like 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, then you probably haven't grown that much. Just be real out there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I get what you
hmm
mean. Okay, so we have a bonus section as well, where I say
hmm
one word or a phrase, and you must reply with the first thought that comes to your mind. Still one word. Make sense?
I reply with one word. Where
Yeah.
you reply with. Okay, cool.
So the first thought that comes to your mind.
Okay.
First phrase is business owner.
Ooh, business owner. Okay, see, this is hard. This is hard.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it.
Uh-huh. Steve Jobs.
Okay. Self-improvement.
Self-improvement. Ooh, Jay Shetty. Have you read Think Like a Monk?
Sounds familiar, but I don't think I've read it.
Yeah, that's who comes to mind. Audience shout out to Jay Shetty. If you want to read his book, it's really awesome.
Mm-hmm. Career goals?
Career goals. Ooh, I would say OKR setting.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Digital marketing?
Digital marketing. Ooh, I would say Neil Patel is one of the first experts I've been reading.
Sounds good.
Mhm.
Management?
Management. Ooh, there's a book that I read called what was it? It was like the principles of a what was it? Forget the word. I'm so bad with like titles of the book, but it's a book about being like a sustainable leader. It's about
Okay.
being someone who's self-aware rather than like
Mm-hmm.
the top-down management approach.
Yeah, I see. And last
hmm
one, conscious living.
Conscious living, yes. Conscious living, I think, like work-life balance and also being aware of yourself, what you can take. I think like in my role, I've definitely burned myself out a lot. And I think
Okay.
being conscious of that, like how much you can take on your plate, but also what lifestyle you want to bring to the world and yourself. That's what
Mm-hmm.
conscious living means to me.
All right, that sounds good. You mentioned a couple of books. So would you recommend others? And obviously, you're open to say your experiences as well in this one. What about the books? Is it do you recommend others to use books in their journey to greatness, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, reading has been a big part of my life, and I love reading just because you can do it on your own pace. It's not like a
Yeah.
university course or online course where it's that much pressure, and I enjoy the process. So I would say
Yeah.
definitely look into the books because there's a lot of great authors out there. And sometimes when you're reading too, when you're relaxed, things really come to you naturally rather than being forced into an environment where they're like, well, you got to learn this in like 10 days. I will definitely send you the links, Antonis, to the books that I recommended. I'm sure you also have some really great recommendations of your own too.
100%. All those links will be in the description anyway. So one more question that I have for conscious living. You mentioned something about work-life balance. Do you want to
Mhm.
say a little bit more about that? Like what's important for you? Is that the most important, or is it even possible for an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I think it is possible. I used to think it's not, but I think it is important. And here's why. So I think when it comes to work-life balance, when you put the onus on someone else to give you that balance, you have already failed. It's actually about yourself. So it's about asking yourself, when is enough enough? Can I take on more work? And being able to put a clear boundary on that when you do feel like you're tired. Or let's say even your personal life, when you feel like you got too much social commitments going on, and sometimes you just want a day to really, lie down, maybe just take a quick walk. It's also the onus is on you. So I think work-life balance only happens when you really take the effort to realize, hey, I need to carve out some time for myself in this day or in this week, or however you want to look at it. And I think the more self-aware you are when it comes to these boundaries and also the lifestyle that you want to hold, the better decisions you can make for yourself, because you're not giving the power away to like your manager or your client or your employees.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any last words from Dani before we close the pod?
I mean, I just want to say thank you so much, Antonis, for having me on this podcast and alongside
Pleasure.
other amazing business leaders. But yeah, if you want to reach out to me or just to chat, I will drop my LinkedIn in the comments below. Feel free to connect with me. But thank you so much.
Brilliant. And that was Dani Hao, ladies and gentlemen.